We've got some crazy coaching rumors here today regarding the Wisconsin situation. Now, I originally had heard that Wisconsin was going to just promote Jim Leonhard to be the full-time head coach. But guys, an absolute bombshell here. They're in talks right now, and it looks like Luke Fickell, one of the hottest coaching candidates over the past several years, who's turned down multiple very, very good Power 5 jobs. Looks like they're talking with Luke Fickell to possibly be the next coach of Wisconsin. This would be a home run hire for Wisconsin, and it really makes me wonder what Luke Fickell's next plan is, considering the assumption was, there were talks of him turning down the Notre Dame job, turning down other jobs because he wanted to wait for the Ohio State one to open. But this would be a very interesting move that I certainly didn't see. And I think the expectation was that Wisconsin was going to stick with Jim Leonhard to kind of just take over that program and really instill that defensive culture. Of course, the problem, if you are a Wisconsin fan and you stick with that type of philosophy, you basically become Iowa 2.0, kind of a better version of Iowa, where because you're able to run the ball, your offense is going to be decent, but your ceiling will be capped because you're so defensive oriented. No real, elite offensive receiver position talent is going to want to play for you. So this is a very, very good hire for Wisconsin if it does end up happening. Sources: Wisconsin has targeted Cincinnati's Luke Fickell to be the next head coach. Things are moving quickly in Madison. Apparently, they're having a meeting with all of their board members today at 4 o'clock. I think that's 4 o'clock Central, so that is 5 Eastern. And there is a lot of rumors that are saying this is moving fast. Cincinnati, their season is virtually over. They have one more bowl game, but them losing to Tulane, signifies that this could happen and this could be announced as early as tonight. Really a shocker and a great hire for Wisconsin. We'll see how long it is, and we'll see if this is where Luke Fickell... It does seem like a really good fit, but it is surprising because Luke Fickell has turned down other Power 5 jobs. What a massive coup this would be for them if it does happen. He's probably the number one candidate in terms of who you would want. It also makes me wonder, what is Auburn doing? If you're Auburn... And you would think you have more money than Wisconsin. I mean, look at this recent comment we saw. Badgers willing to pay $6 million per year. That doesn't seem like enough to get Luke Fickell. I'm no AD, but that's below market. It's at least $2 or $3 million per year below market. I think Luke Fickell, if Matt Rule is getting a contract at around $8 million per year, you're talking about Fickell being at $9 or $10 million. We remember Mel Tucker's mega deal, decade-long deal. I think that's around $10 million per year, so that would be a massive underpay. It seems like Auburn is asleep at the wheel, and you look at Hugh Freeze and what Liberty did in their performance against New Mexico State. If I'm an Auburn fan and this ends up happening with Luke Fickell going to Wisconsin, I would be pissed. But we will see if it does happen. This all developing right now. And this is even a better hire than the Matt Rule hire by Nebraska, which a lot of people think is a home run. I think it's a good hire, but we also thought the Scott Frost hire was a home run. So I say on the Nebraska thing, let's wait and see. It looks good on paper right now, but Luke Fickell, what he's done at Cincinnati, I think that, Luke Fickell was getting some criticism when we were talking yesterday about potentially Ohio State replacing Ryan Day with Luke Fickell, and they were like, well, Luke Fickell lost to Tulane. Cincinnati is not a program that can reload. They lost like 7 or 8 guys to the NFL draft. That is crippling, and they were still in contention for a conference championship in a solid, in a decently good conference in the American Conference. So I think Luke Fickell is a really, really good coach. The year he had with Ohio State back in 2011 wasn't good, but that was his first year coaching. There were a lot of things surrounding that team And I just think, you get more experience, you get better. I really am a fan of Luke Fickell, and I think it's a great fit for Wisconsin if they're able to get this done somehow. The other stuff to talk about, we've got David Shaw leaving Stanford. I think it was a mutual thing. Stanford didn't want to fire him, so I think Stanford probably said, listen, we're either going to fire you or you can leave on your own, because they have respect for him, because David Shaw did have an amazing run with Stanford. It'll be interesting to see what David Shaw wants to do. Does he possibly want to become a coordinator in the NFL, or maybe a coordinator in college? I still think David Shaw is a good coach, but certainly he ran his course at Stanford. I mean, that was not a good football team, especially the past 3 years. There was speculation that they would give him one more year, but this does seem like this administration said, listen, we can't keep doing this. We respect you. You can either leave or we're going to fire you. And he ends up leaving. And then the other big coaching news is Deion Sanders being offered the job at Colorado, which I think would be so cool, because Colorado, if you guys don't know, they just went 1-11 this year. One of the worst Power 5 programs of the past decade when you look at their average, point of margin, their losses. I believe they were 30-point underdogs the last 4 weeks. They didn't cover any spreads. And Deion Sanders would immediately get multiple high-level transfers through the transfer portal. Multiple kids if he accepts this job, would decommit from their current schools, decommit and go to Colorado and follow Deion Sanders. And this could be a situation for Deion Sanders where he stays at Colorado for 3 or 4 years, builds them up a little bit, and then really becomes the number one candidate for an extremely high-level job. Maybe he thinks about looking at a job like Alabama when Nick Saban retires, if he does well. I think there's another issue with Deion Sanders, and he had like a Prime Academy or something, and it was a big fraud thing or something. I don't know, but that was a rumor why people were scared about hiring him. Clearly, Colorado doesn't care. It makes sense. Colorado is desperate. They know that this is, at minimum, he's going to bring life to their program, which is dead in the water right now, so it makes complete sense. And I'm sure Deion Sanders' agent has no issue leaking this, that Deion Sanders is getting job offers, and that makes him a more hot commodity, things like that. I don't know if he'll accept it. It definitely would be risky to accept something like this, considering I think he could even get a better job than this, even with the limited experience in terms of just coaching at Jackson State, mainly due to his resume as a college football player, his overall, how popular he is, how he's able to get a lot of recruits and things like that. And you're talking about the number one overall player in the country going to Jackson State mainly because of Deion Sanders. That is pretty remarkable. So certainly if Colorado can get him, I think that's amazing for them. Anything is better than what's currently going on. It's either Deion Sanders or some retread offensive coordinator from Arizona or what are Colorado's real options here? I think this is a good idea for them to throw their hat in the ring. And again, I'm sure Deion Sanders loves that this is all getting leaked because it shows that he is a hot commodity. Would Auburn possibly look at someone like Deion Sanders? If I'm Auburn, obviously I don't know the vetting process, the whole thing with Deion Sanders, but I would 1,000% try Deion Sanders over Hugh Freeze. Hugh Freeze is an SEC retread. It's just there's no juice to hiring Hugh Freeze at all. It's like a worse version of Lane Kiffin. So I think I would if they hire Hugh Freeze, I give that an F if I'm Auburn. I think Auburn is not the play for them, and that would set their program probably back another 4 or 5 years, and they'd go through the whole thing where they gave him a chance, and then they'd have to fire him and then hire someone else. But again, I think the real story today is this development with Luke Fickell, where I think a lot of us thought that Fickell was waiting for the Ohio State job to possibly open. That's why he was declining all of these high-level Power 5 positions. And also people were saying, well, Cincinnati is going to a Power 5 conference. They're going to the Big 12. So, that's another reason. But if this happens to Wisconsin, you have to, think of this as a major win for Wisconsin. And really, really, the way they've built up that program kind of, the rough few years they've had, this could get them back on track and be a perennial contender. Of course, Wisconsin has enjoyed the benefit of being in the West, which is going to change with USC and UCLA, but still, this has got to be the number one home run hire if they're able to get him. Again, there's a little bit of conflicting reports. They're saying that they're willing to pay $6 million. It's going to cost more than $6 million, you would think. If Matt Rule costs $8 million, if Mel Tucker costs $10 million, Luke Fickell is going to cost a little bit more than $6 million per year. Wisconsin is going to have to shell out probably at least $8 million per year to get Fickell from Cincinnati. And so that is the big news happening right now in the coaching carousel. The other stuff we were talking about, what's going on with Stanford. That is at least the semi-attractive job with where it's located, with the academics and stuff like that. I'm not going to speculate on who Stanford's going to go after. I really haven't seen any lists yet, but it is a semi-attractive job for sure. Colorado taking their shot at Deion Sanders. Auburn seems to still be looking at Hugh Freeze, although I should probably get an update on how that search is going. The last I saw in terms of the overall odds, Hugh Freeze was the favorite, but I will probably have to update that in my next coaching rumors video. We will see if this Wisconsin thing happens. It looks like they're moving quickly, possibly announcing something tonight after their board meeting at around 5 o'clock Eastern, 4 o'clock Central, or maybe 5 o'clock Central, something like that. They will have to approve a contract and offer Luke Fickell it. And if it's gotten that far to where they're meeting, this is what they were saying on Twitter, if it's gotten so far to where they're all meeting together, this thing very likely could be happening, which is a definite surprise. I thought Luke Fickell would be waiting. There was rumors last year about the Notre Dame job that he declined it. And now you're going to take the Wisconsin job. Kind of weird, but it still is a good, stable job. They will give you certainly a lot of time to build a program there. This is not a situation like we're seeing with Ohio State where, Ryan Day is getting run out of the city because he can't beat Michigan. I think Ryan Day's record is 45-5, but it really doesn't matter what Ryan Day's record is. If you keep losing to Michigan like this, you're not going to be the coach of the team. There's just a standard, and it is what it is. So, also the other thing I'll talk about with Ohio State after the situation yesterday, the only way Ryan Day is leaving is if Day gets pissed off and says, "I'm done with this fan base." And he says, you know what, I'd rather just coach the Houston Texans. That's the only thing I can see. He'd go to the NFL and be a head coach for Houston. They're going to give Day one more chance to beat Michigan. And then, obviously, if Day loses again next year to Michigan, which is on the road, it's going to be a very hard game for Ohio State. They might actually be underdogs in that game, right? The last two games, Ohio State against Michigan, Ohio State's been 8-point favorites and they get blown out. They might actually get their wishes and be underdogs by Vegas next year on the road with a returning J.J. McCarthy. Ohio State possibly starting Devin Brown, maybe Kyle McCord, although I heard that Ryan Day thinks Kyle McCord is a dud. It doesn't surprise me after what we've seen Kyle McCord in limited action. He doesn't look very good. But we will see, guys. Either way, that is the latest update. The big bombshell is the Luke Fickell situation possibly developing with Wisconsin. And the real story right now in terms of the coaching carousel is two Big Ten teams getting elite college football coach. Nebraska and Wisconsin. The Big Ten is getting better if these hires end up happening. The Matt Rule hire is official. It's an 8-year contract, I think around $8 million per year. And now this development between Wisconsin and Luke Fickell. So we will see.